10. Falling into a volcanic crater. In 2017, an Italian family of 4 took a vacation to Pozzuoli in the country's northeastern region. While visiting the Solfatara crater, their 11-year-old son snuck past a safety barrier and onto an unstable part of the crater that's made from quicksand. His parents, 45-year-old Massimiliano Carra and 42-year-old Tiziana Zaramella, ran after him, causing the crater to collapse and sending all 3 into a hole where they died from the dormant volcano's noxious fumes. The fields are scorching hot, only a few inches below the surface. Signs around the crater in multiple languages warn of the danger of burning from high soil temperatures and steam up to 160 degrees Celsius, 320 degrees Fahrenheit. Visitors are told to stay away from the openings that emit steam and gases, and not to climb the slopes or go beyond the fences. Rescue workers who retrieved the trio's lifeless bodies reported that the pit they fell into was filled with boiling mud. The couple's 7-year-old son, who'd stayed put when his mother and father ran after his brother, was the only surviving family member. As one of the many dormant volcanoes that can be found west of Naples, the Solfatara crater continues to emit sulfur and steam after last erupting in 1198. Armando Guerriero, who owns a bar near the site's entrance, told The Sun that in the 40 years he'd been in the area, no accident like this had ever happened before. 9. Accidentally bathing in acid. In 2016, 23-year-old Colin Nathaniel Scott traveled from Oregon to Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming with his sister. They were looking for a hot spring to soak in, known as hot potting, in a part of the park near the Norris Geyser where visitors aren't allowed to go. When Scott bent down to check the temperature of a spring, he slipped and fell in. His sister captured the horrifying incident on camera, but authorities decided against releasing the footage. Scott's body was later found in the pool, but rescuers couldn't retrieve it because of a storm in the area. They returned the next day to find that his remains had completely dissolved in the spring's acidic waters. As the thermal water that feeds the park's springs and geysers continues to rise to the surface, it picks up sulfuric acid along the way, which is one reason why the public is not supposed to go near them. Deputy Chief Ranger Laurent Verez told local station KULR that it's important for people to obey warning signs within the park because Yellowstone's not been changed to make it safe for humans. There are many dangers, and the warnings are there for a reason. 8. Eating oneself to death. Pauline Seawood was a model from Liverpool, England, who had a habit of fasting followed by binge eating. One day in 1981, the 24-year-old finished one of her fasts and embarked on a deadly feast. The meal was 2 raw cauliflowers, 2 sausages, a pound 454 grams of raw liver, 2 pounds 907 grams of kidneys, 2 pounds of raw peas, 3 pounds 1.2 kilograms of raw carrots, and 1 pound of mushrooms. After that, she gorged on an array of fruit, including peaches, pears, apples, bananas, plums, and grapes, along with cheese and bread. Within 5 hours, Pauline was having trouble breathing. She was rushed to the hospital, where doctors performed emergency surgery but failed to save her life. Pauline's mother told the press that Pauline weighed just 56 pounds, 25.4 kilograms when she first became interested in modeling at 17. Photographers told the young woman that she would look better if she filled out a little more, which is when Pauline's mother said she began her peculiar routine of starving herself and then binging. Over time, it became more and more and more food. An inquest ruled Pauline had accidentally eaten herself to death. It was the first case of its kind ever seen by Dr. Gordon Stampo, who performed the post-mortem examination. 7. A deadly attempt at fame. 19-year-old Mona Lisa Perez and her boyfriend 22-year-old Pedro Ruiz III were relatively popular YouTube pranksters from Minnesota. They decided to take their stunts to an extremely new level in 2017, hoping to achieve viral fame. Shortly before filming the stunt, Perez tweeted that she and Pedro were about to shoot one of their most dangerous videos ever, and that it was his idea, not hers. The plan was for Perez to shoot at a book while Ruiz held it out in front of his chest outside their home. Ruiz had apparently tested the idea out by shooting at a similar book, which had succeeded in stopping the bullet. But things turned out much differently this time, when Perez fired a bullet from a .50 caliber pistol that traveled straight through the book Ruiz was holding and straight into his chest, killing him at the scene. The couple's 3-year-old child was reportedly there and witnessed the tragedy firsthand. Police charged Perez, who was pregnant at the time, with second-degree manslaughter. Court documents revealed that she was standing just a foot away from the young man when she pulled the trigger. Perez pleaded guilty to the manslaughter charge to avoid going to trial and received a 180-day jail sentence followed by 10 years of probation. She was also prohibited from profiting from the deadly video and was banned from owning firearms for the rest of her life. As part of the plea deal, Perez would serve her sentence in 30-day segments over a 3-year period and would be eligible to finish her time on house arrest with an ankle monitor. 6. Eating a slug. Australian teenage rugby player Sam Ballard was drinking wine with some friends in Sydney one night in 2010 when a slug crawled into view. He asked his buddies if they dared him to eat it, but before they could respond, he popped the slimy creature into his mouth and swallowed it. Not long after, Sam fell gravely ill and was rushed to the hospital, where doctors discovered he was infected with lung rat lungworm. Snails and slugs can get the parasite by eating infected rodent feces. And while people rarely experience symptoms from rat lungworm, it can occasionally cause a rare but serious brain infection, which is what happened in Sam's case. He fell into a coma for 420 days and was paralyzed from the neck down. The young man's friend, Michael Sheesby, told the local press that it was shocking to see his quadriplegic friend. He described Sam as very, very gaunt and said that there were cables everywhere. Sam's mother, Katie, said that she doesn't blame her son's pals for the dare that forever changed Sam's life. When he was finally released from hospital after 3 grueling years, his friends rallied around him. He suffered from seizures, couldn't control his body temperature, and needed costly, round-the-clock care that his family struggled to afford. Sadly, Sam passed away in late 2018, 8 years after the fateful dare. His final words to his mother were, "I love you." 5. Headbanging too hard to heavy metal. In 2013, a 50-year-old German man went to the doctor with a terrible, constant headache that he had been suffering from for about 2 weeks. He told doctors he hadn't been abusing any drugs, and they found nothing remarkable in the patient's medical history. But he had been headbanging at a Motorhead concert a few weeks before the headache started. A CT scan revealed that the man had a blood clot beneath the membrane that protects the brain, known as chronic subdural hematoma. And he'd gotten it from headbanging at the Motorhead concert. Luckily, it was caught on time for doctors to drill holes in the patient's skull and ease the pressure, allowing him to make a full recovery. But not everyone who's gotten hematomas from headbanging has been this fortunate. While the doctors who treated the man admit that it's rare for headbanging to cause serious health problems, they found 3 past examples of it happening, including one where the patient suddenly died. In that case, the individual had acquired an acute hematoma, which forms right after the injury and comes with a 60% chance of dying. 4. Drinking gasoline. When some party-going teens in Tennessee wanted to get their hands on some alcohol in 2016, one of them came up with the idea of mixing racing fuel and soda together in hopes of catching a buzz. Racing fuel is an additive meant to improve a car or motorcycle's performance. It contains the toxic ingredient methanol. 4 teens drank the dangerous concoction at the party. One of them, a 16-year-old boy, was found dead in his home 11 hours later. Another 16-year-old boy was rushed to the hospital with seizures, where he received medicine for poisoning, but he died 5 days later. The 2 teens who survived reported drinking 2 ounces each of the mixture. They were tested for poisoning at the hospital and luckily didn't get sick. While it's unclear how much the deceased teens drank, a CDC report stated that an empty 2-liter bottle was found at the scene. The tragedy marked the first known deaths from drinking racing fuel in the US, according to the report, which specified that just 1 tablespoon, 15 milliliters of methanol, can kill a person. People have also died from methanol poisoning, from trying to make their own alcohol, and from illegally manufactured spirits, which can contain lethal amounts of methanol when they're not distilled properly. 3. Shot with cigarette butts. During a party at their Woodbridge, New Jersey apartment in 2001, 29-year-old Anthony Saduk Jr. decided to prank his 31-year-old roommate, Wesley Geisinger. He loaded a rifle with cigarette butts and wads of paper towels and fired at Geisinger's chest. The father of two collapsed and was pronounced dead shortly after. A medical examiner's report concluded that 3 cigarette butts had fatally penetrated Geisinger's ribcage right above his heart. Police charged Saduk with aggravated manslaughter in connection with his roommate's death and 2 counts of aggravated assault relating to another incident at the party. He'd loaded a muzzle-loader pistol with gunpowder and shot at Geisinger and another man. Saduk pled guilty to aggravated assault and received an 18-month prison sentence under New Jersey's Graves Act, which imposes mandatory crime for criminals who use firearms. At his sentencing, he said that Geisinger was like a brother to him and that he never meant for something like this to happen. After 3 weeks behind bars, Saduk's sentence was commuted by then-Governor Donald T. DeFrancesco. Geisinger's father, David, was glad to see the man released, stating that what happened was a tragic accident and that nothing good would have come out of Saduk being in jail. In the elder Geisinger's words, one life was lost and another life was ruined. 2. Eating a live octopus. In late 2019, a 71-year-old man choked to death in South Korea after eating the chopped but still moving tentacles of a live octopus. He was having lunch at a seafood restaurant when he collapsed. By the time emergency responders arrived, he was dead. Police believed a tentacle had fatally blocked his airway. Live octopus is a Korean delicacy. It's especially popular during the summer when it's eaten as a stamina booster, but it can be deadly, especially when it's not prepared properly. The suction cups on the tentacles are a choking hazard because they can stick to the inside of someone's throat and obstruct their breathing, according to nutritionist Jenny Tichai, who spoke with The Insider in 2019. For this reason, she says, eating live octopus is not recommended. The tragedy came less than a decade after a woman stopped breathing after eating a live octopus and died 16 days later. She'd gone out to dinner with her boyfriend near Seoul, where they each ate a live octopus. They went to a motel afterward, where it became clear that something was wrong. Police initially ruled the woman's death an accident, but they opened an investigation 5 months later at the urging of her father, who suspected that her boyfriend had killed her for her life insurance money. Shortly before she died, the woman had taken out a life insurance policy and named her boyfriend as the sole beneficiary. He stood to gain $190,000 from her untimely death. The man was charged with allegedly strangling his girlfriend and was convicted of murder, but he appealed the conviction and it got overturned. An appeals court cited a lack of evidence pointing towards his guilt in the woman's death. In order to be safe for human consumption, live octopus tentacles have to be cut into really small pieces. There are a number of other steps that professional chefs go through to ensure that the delicacy is enjoyable and doesn't put any lives at risk. Unfortunately, not all chefs are properly trained in these procedures. 1. Prank robbery gone wrong. YouTuber Timothy Wilkes was just 20 years old when his life was cut short in a prank that went horribly wrong early last year. He was pretending to rob people at knife point in a Nashville parking lot outside a trampoline park while his friend filmed their reactions. Things took an ugly turn when Wilkes approached a group of people, causing one man to feel threatened enough to fatally shoot him. Wilkes' friend could end up facing some time. A lawyer said to a Fox 17 correspondent, "I'm sure the people involved would like to characterize this as a prank. It certainly seems to be a prank that went seriously awry." The shooter, 23-year-old David Starnes Jr., reportedly didn't know that the group was being pranked when he opened fire on Wilkes. He remained on the scene until officers from the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department arrived and told them he shot the young man in self-defense. In the tragedy's aftermath, police announced they had not pressed any charges and were investigating the incident. Wilkes' grandmother, Shirley Berry, told local station WKRN that her grandson's death had inspired her to encourage parents to pay attention to what their children are doing on social media. She first learned about Timothy's YouTubing activities after he was shot and urged others to look at the tragedy as a cautionary tale about the dangers of these types of pranks. Thanks for watching. Would you rather wake up to news headlines that someone you knew had accidentally injured their partner in a prank gone wrong, or be virally shamed over video footage of yourself verbally abusing a restaurant server? Let me know in the comments below.